Senator Tom O'Mara, thanks so much for being here.
Good to be on. Thanks for having me, Dan.
Anytime. So I want to talk to you about the budget, but before that, I want to talk to you about the issue of nursing homes, since you have been one of the most outspoken members of the legislature on the issue. You're also the top-ranking Republican on the Senate Investigations Committee, and the Senate is going to be reportedly moving to curb some of the governor's emergency powers, which were given to him last year during the start of the pandemic. I'm wondering, do you think that goes far enough? And from your perspective, what do you think the end goal should be here?
Well, the end goal needs to be an investigation to determine what happened and why it happened. We still have not been provided even the information that they've provided to the Department of Justice at this point. And now there's a formal investigation apparently started in the Eastern District of New York by the FBI and the U.S. Attorney there. I really think we need to have a special counsel appointed for this, because Melissa DeRosa, the secretary of the governor that came out with that statement about stuff being used against him, her mother-in-law is the U.S. attorney in the Southern District, right next to the Eastern District jurisdiction. So that's problematic in my view, and I think we need an independent, unbiased look into what's going on here, what the cover-up actually is. The governor went so far as to threaten a member of the assembly with his career. The governor has certainly been known to do that over the years, strong-arming people, but to call somebody and say, change your story, get in line, we don't operate like this, is just more added on to the cover-up there. So there's a lot that needs to be looked in here.
Democrats have been talking for 6 months about issuing subpoenas to the Cuomo administration for this information. And now that we're at the point where the New York Post revealed that closed-door conversation between Melissa DeRosa and the senators, they're coming on board with some of the positions that Republicans had held. Do you think that it's been a failure by Democrats in the majority not to use their subpoena power in those 6 months? Because it would seem to me, and the governor said this the other day, that if they really needed that information over those 6 months, they did have the tools to obtain it.
They've absolutely failed in their duties of oversight on this issue. They've talked a lot about issuing subpoenas. They've talked a lot about terminating the governor's emergency powers, yet they've taken no action when they're here in Albany, despite our strong efforts in bringing motions to the floor of the chamber and the Senate. They still vote against them. The administration, the Cuomo administration, also stonewalled FOIL requests from the Empire Center, a good government group here in Albany. And that's unfortunately par for the course for this administration, to stonewall FOIL requests to get information so that people can be examining this, and they're entitled to it by law. It's not right. I think it's an abuse of power, and there should be consequences to Governor Cuomo and his staff for failing to follow the law.
I think it's fair to say that there's been a breach of trust between the Cuomo administration and the legislature at this point, even talking about the majorities in both chambers. Do you think there's anything the governor could do right now to gain some of that trust back, either from the legislature or the public? What do you think that he could do right now to maybe lower the temperature or at least move things forward?
Well, the governor's been known as a great communicator. He didn't win an Emmy for nothing. His daily celebrity shows, keeping us updated on the coronavirus, were well done, and people were well informed. So he has the ability to communicate this, but he's stonewalling on this. The biggest problem with the emergency powers, from my perspective, in the 11 months that they've been granted, is that as soon as the governor got those, they basically shut down all communication and exchange with the legislature. That's insulting to the legislature and the oversight role, the checks and balances of the legislature with the executive branch. We haven't followed that for 11 months. These majorities are derelict in their responsibilities, and they've continued to collect their incomes over these 11 months, doing next to nothing, not doing their constitutional role in oversight on this. And many of their constituents and mine were unemployed a lot during this period of the coronavirus. Yet this legislature has been fully paid, getting their benefits, and not doing their job.
So happening at the same time as all of this, kind of unfortunately, because it takes some attention away, is the state budget process. The state budget is due at the end of March. The state is facing a $15 billion deficit over 2 years. The governor's proposed his budget plan. Democrats seem to be leaning towards some sort of tax hikes on the rich. We don't really know how that's going to hash out, but you are also the top-ranking Republican on the Senate Finance Committee, which negotiates the budget with the governor's office. How do you think the state should be looking to fill that giant budget gap that we're facing right now?
Well, I don't believe the budget gap is as significant as the governor has claimed. The governor is certainly trying to make a case to the federal government for as much relief as we possibly can get. I think the gap is probably half of what the governor's claiming that it is. It is a busy time in looking at this, and we're going to find out soon, I think, from the feds just how much money is going to come, and hopefully some of that's going to be directed to local governments directly and not passing through the state, because Cuomo is also known for redirecting those funds or actually cutting what state funds were going to go to certain programs and other local governments and supplanting it with the federal CARES money that has come. So we want to make sure that doesn't happen. But this whole scandal, it's really throwing a big wrench into the budget process. And the governor, as we've seen since the scandal broke, he's going to do everything he possibly can now to build goodwill, changing his restrictions almost daily, loosening things up. We can't complain about our economy struggling while the governor has actively shut down our economy, creating bigger fiscal woes than we would have had otherwise.
All right, well, we will be watching how the budget plays out over the next few weeks. As I said, it's due at the end of March. Senator Tom O'Mara, thanks so much for being here.
Thanks for having me, Dan.